think about some of the pressures that are still on federal interest rates. The Fed has been holding tight, but let me bring in a different dynamic. I mean, the government is having to issue a great deal of debt, refinance a great deal of debt because much of it is held short term. And some of our usual buyers abroad, Japan, China, seem to have cut back on their purchases. Is there going to be pressure on higher interest rates on our debt because of, well, maybe some questions about demand for it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually looked at the data on foreign holdings of federal debt. I mean, foreign central banks and foreign investors hold roughly a quarter of our publicly held debt. And we have seen, now there's a bit of a lag, the Treasury data on who holds our debt. I think the latest data is maybe through August of this summer, or maybe September, I think was the latest data. And it is true, China and Japan and Great Britain are the three biggest buyers of government securities. And we've seen a drop. I mean, both China and Japan were holding over $1 trillion each in federal securities. And those numbers have both come down by about 200 billion each. So they're now in the neighborhood of 800 billion. But overall, other foreign borrowers have stepped up and filled the gap. So the total amount held by foreign investors is about 7.7 trillion now, which is what it was, about a year ago. So, there seem right now to be other buyers who are willing to step in. But, if China and Japan continue to let their holdings roll over, or I should say roll off, and they don't renew them, if that is indicator of a further contagion that other foreign investors are going to do the same, clearly that's a problem. And of course, on top of that, you've got the Federal Reserve. They're rolling off their balance sheet, and they've come down. The peak at the Fed, they were holding about 5.8 trillion in government securities, and they're now down to about 4.9. So they've rolled off almost $1 trillion. And of course, that puts pressure on interest rates because, it's sort of counterintuitive. Normally when you increase the supply of something, the price should fall, and you see, oh, well, the price falls, that means it's cheaper. But when you're talking about government securities, when the government increases the demand, and the price falls, what that means is that the interest rate goes up. So prices and the price of securities and the interest rates are, they move in opposite directions. And so, that's why we've seen, just a week ago, the 10-year bond rate reached 5% for the first time since 2007. And so you're seeing this pressure to raise interest rates to basically attract investors to continue to buy government securities. I think what we've seen in the past, even though we're not adding to the debt as fast as we were, during the pandemic, you've got this huge amount of debt. I mean, there's $25 trillion in government securities, and 30% of that's going to get rolled over within the next 12 months, and 80% of that will get rolled over in the next 10 years. And to continue to roll that over year after year after year, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the market. And if there's any reason for market participants to have some doubt about the government's commitment and ability to, maintain some sense of fiscal responsibility, that's when you have a financial crisis, as markets lose faith in the government, and they demand higher interest payments as compensation for the risk. And I don't, we're not there yet, and that's not what we're seeing. I mean, basically, the higher rates right now are a combination of both the Fed policy and the fact that inflation is higher. But you get what's called a risk premium, which means market participants are uncertain about the risk of the securities, and that gets added on top of whatever the inflation premium is. And that's when you see interest rates really get potentially out of control.